G'day, welcome to Plugged In Australia, episode 60 for Monday, the 1st of June 2026. And today we've got a packed episode, and a lot of it comes back to one theme. Electrified vehicles are not just arriving in Australia now, they are being adapted, priced, tested, updated, and supported for our market. Mitsubishi is preparing its first new EV for Australia in more than a decade, and this one has had serious Australian involvement. Lexus has taken a massive axe to RZ pricing. BYD is sharpening the Shark 6 plug-in hybrid range. MG has a big premium range extender SUV on the way. Denza is pushing software updates for towing and off-road use. And in the practical energy space, we've got Kia's PV5 electric vans spotted locally, Tesla finally putting V2L hardware on the table, and Amber expanding its vehicle-to-grid trial. Let's get into it. Mitsubishi is finally getting ready to return to the EV market. That's a bigger deal than it might sound, because Mitsubishi was actually early to EVs here. The IM8 arrived in Australia way back in 2010, which made Mitsubishi one of the first brands to offer a proper battery electric car locally. But after that, the brand basically stepped away from full EVs in this market and focused heavily on plug-in hybrids, especially the Outlander plug-in hybrid. Now, Mitsubishi Australia has confirmed it will launch its first new EV here in 14 years, before the end of 2026. The interesting part is not just that the car is coming, it's how it's coming. This new EV will be sourced from Foxconn, the Taiwanese electric vehicle manufacturer, created through Foxconn and Yulon joint venture. Now, Foxconn is best known globally as one of the biggest electronic manufacturing names in the world, including major work in consumer electronics, and now it is trying to become a serious player in electric vehicles. However, Mitsubishi Australia is not just grabbing a badge-engineered EV and throwing it into showrooms. The local team says Australia has had extensive involvement in development, testing, tuning and validation. Mitsubishi Australia's product team has said that the car has undergone testing here and that Australian conditions were part of the evaluation process. The local claim is that the car will have ride and handling tuned for Australian roads, and that the Australian and New Zealand markets will be the only places to get this Mitsubishi badged locally tuned version. That matters because Australian roads are not always kind. We have coarse chip bitumen, country roads, heat, long distances, corrugation, speed humps, lots of speed bumps, and a lot of buyers who expect an SUV to feel stable and tough even if they are only using it as a daily runabout. The exact Mitsubishi model name and final specifications are still being held back, with more detail expected around August. But in the reporting points towards the Foxtron Bria as the likely base vehicle. If that is the car, then we're looking at a compact electric SUV or crossover with a 57.7 kilowatt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery in the base version. Overseas figures for the Bria point to up to 516 kilometres on the much more generous NEDC test cycle. So in real-world Australian terms and under a stricter WLTP style comparison, buyers should not expect that full number. Power outputs overseas are listed at 171 kilowatts for the rear-wheel drive version and up to 299 kilowatts for the dual-motor all-wheel drive version, with the stronger model capable of a claimed 0 to 100 time of 3.9 seconds. That would put it well beyond the old idea of Mitsubishi as a conservative EV player. A 299 kilowatt all-wheel drive compact SUV is going to be properly quick. The biggest strategic point is that Mitsubishi really needs this car. The new vehicle efficiency standard is now reshaping the Australian market. Brands selling a lot of utes, large SUVs and petrol or diesel vehicles need cleaner models to balance the numbers. Mitsubishi has the Outlander plug-in hybrid, but one plug-in hybrid is not enough if the rest of the market keeps moving. Mitsubishi has also been working through alliances and partnerships. However, the local team appears to have chosen the Foxtron path because it could deliver a vehicle more directly suited to Australian and New Zealand needs. Fact of the matter is that Mitsubishi is late to the EV party. In the time since the IM8, we have had Tesla take over the premium EV conversation, BYD become a mainstream threat, MG has pushed EV prices down, Kia and Hyundai have been developing strong, dedicated EVs, and you've got Volvo, Polestar, Zeekr, Smart, Leapmotor, and all the others all pushing into the market. So Mitsubishi cannot afford to bring something half-baked. So if this new EV arrives with some good pricing, decent real-world range, local suspension tuning and proper dealer support, It could give Mitsubishi buyers a familiar badge and a lower emissions option. But if it lands too expensive, or feels like a rebadge rather than a Mitsubishi developed product, buyers will compare it directly against the BYD Atto 2 and Atto 3, MG's S5 EV and MG4, the Leapmotor B10, the Kia EV3, and a really growing list of compact electric SUVs. So for now, this is one of the most important Mitsubishi story in years for us. The brand that helped start Australia's EV story is finally coming back to the full electric market. Lexus has made one of the clearest price reset moves we've seen in the premium EV space. The updated Lexus RZ electric SUV has arrived with massive price cuts, and in some cases the reduction is more than $40,000 compared with the previous equivalent model. The new RZ500e Luxury now starts from $84,500 before on-road costs. The RZ500e Sports Luxury is priced from $91,000. Compared with the outgoing RZ450e versions, that means reductions of more than $36,000 for the entry-level grade and more than $42,000 for the Sports Luxury. That's not a minor repositioning, it's a major reset. Lexus says the cuts come from manufacturing efficiencies, production improvements, and a more competitive global market. The brand is not saying the old car was overpriced, but buyers will understandably look at a $40,000 price drop and ask, what's changed? The updated RZ500e is also not just cheaper, it's stronger. Power is up to 280 kilowatts from the dual motor all-wheel drive system, which is 50 kilowatts more than before. Torque remains at 537 newton meters. The battery has grown from 71.4 kilowatt hours to 74.7 kilowatt hours, and WLTP driving range is up to 460 kilometers, which is around 16% better than before. AC charging has also been doubled to 22 kilowatts, which is useful for buyers who have access to higher output AC chargers at home, work, or public destinations. Lexus has also made body and chassis changes, including extra bracing, improved rigidity, retuned suspension, and more work on noise and vibration. Above the RZ500e model sits the new RZ550e F Sport, priced from $105,000 before on roads. That one brings more performance, a 77 kilowatt hour battery, 300 kilowatts of power, and it introduces Lexus's steer-by-wire yoke steering system in Australia. It also gets the simulated manual-style driving system Lexus calls interactive manual drive, with artificial shift steps designed to give the driver a little bit more involvement. The pricing story is important, I think, because the RZ's been really struggling. Sales were small last year, and Lexus itself does not appear to be expecting it to suddenly become a huge volume seller, even with the lower price. Local comments suggest the brand is forecasting around 300 RZ sales a year. And that sounds conservative, but it may be a little bit more realistic. The premium EV SUV market is getting very crowded. The RZ has to fight against the Tesla Model Y, the Volvo EX60, Polestar models, BMW's iX3, the Audi Q6 e-tron, Mercedes-Benz has got some electric SUVs, then you've got Zeekr, Genesis, and a few others there as well. Some of those rivals offer longer range, faster charging, more aggressive pricing, or stronger EV brand recognition. There is also a perception issue. Lexus buyers trust Lexus for reliability, refinement, and the ownership experience. But EV buyers are often comparing software, charging integration, app experience, real-world efficiency, and value. Now, Lexus has to prove it can compete in that space. I think the good news is that new pricing finally makes the RZ look a little bit more serious. The RZ500e Luxury and Sports Luxury now sit below the fuel-efficient luxury car tax threshold, and they should remain eligible for the fringe benefits tax exemption while the rules still apply. Now, that could make them much more attractive for novated lease buyers, at least. However, the fact of the matter is that cutting the price does not automatically make the RZ a winner. It makes it more competitive, sure. It makes it easier to recommend, makes the value argument a little bit less difficult, but Lexus still needs to convince EV buyers that the RZ is not just a quiet luxury SUV with a battery, but a proper electric product in its own right. It's a good move from Lexus. It's also a sign of where the premium EV market is heading. Prices are being forced down, equipment's going up, and brands that launched expensive early EVs are having to reset. And for buyers, that can only be a good thing. BYD's Shark 6 is becoming one of the most important plug-in hybrid vehicles in Australia, and the range is now getting broader and smarter. The big update is that the Shark 6 lineup is expanding beyond the original premium grade. BYD now has a dynamic cab chassis at the lower end and a familiar premium in the middle, as well as a new performance grade at the top. Pricing starts from $55,900 before on-road costs for the Shark 6 dynamic cab chassis, then $57,900 before on-roads for the premium, and $62,900 before on-roads for the new performance. The dynamic and premium use BYD's 1.5-litre turbocharged plug-in hybrid system with dual electric motors. Combined outputs are 321 kilowatts, 650 newton meters, with the all-wheel drive and acclaimed 0 to 100 time of 5.7 seconds. Battery capacity is 29.6 kilowatt hours, of course using BYD's Blade battery chemistry. Electric-only range is listed at up to 100 kilometres on the NEDC cycle, with a combined NEDC driving range of around 800 kilometres. Combined fuel consumption is listed at 2 litres per 100 kilometres on that same test cycle, but as always with the plug-in hybrids, real-world fuel use depends heavily on how often the battery is charged. Now, the premium adds comfort and tech over the dynamic, including the larger 15.6-inch rotating screen, the Dyne audio system, heated and ventilated front seats, power passenger seat and privacy glass. It also gets vehicle-to-load capability, over-the-air update ability, and the latest software changes. The new Shark 6 Performance is the interesting one for heavier-duty buyers. It steps up to a 2-litre turbocharged plug-in hybrid powertrain with outputs of 350 kilowatts, 700 newton meters of torque, and got the claimed 0 to 100 time of 5.5 seconds. More importantly for the Australian ute world, the performance increases its braked towing capacity to 3.5 tonne, compared with the 2.5 tonne for the dynamic and the premium. Gross combination mass rises to 6,650 kilograms, and the tow ball download increases to 350 kilograms. I think that matters because one of the early criticisms of the Shark 6 was its towing ability. A 2.5 tonne tow rating is enough for the vast majority of buyers. However, in Australia, 3.5 tonne is the headline number people expect in the ute segment, even if a lot of owners never actually tow that much. The performance also gets crawl mode, continental tyres, ventilated front discs, and an extra mountain drive mode. Electric-only range drops to around 80 kilometres on the WLTP cycle, and combined range is listed at 640 kilometres WLTP, which is still useful but not quite the big NEDC number used for the lower grades. BYD is also rolling out software upgrades. Premium and performance grades get Google Automotive Services, including Google Maps, Google Assistant, and Google Pay. That means the car has embedded Google functionality rather than relying only on phone mirroring. There is also a new off-road crawl mode, as I said, being rolled out across the range. On the dynamic and premium, it is coming via an over-the-air update, while the performance gets it from launch. The system is designed to simulate low-range driving behavior by managing torque delivery at very low speeds, reducing throttle sensitivity and helping traction on loose surfaces. BYD is also offering an Ironman alloy tray package for the cab chassis, and that tray will measure 1,679 millimeters by 1,809 millimeters, including 8 tie-down points, lockable storage boxes, and can be optioned with a trundle tray. Pricing is around $5,000 plus installation, and BYD says the setup retains access to the charging port, V2L, and driver assistance systems. The Shark 6 story is bigger than one model. It shows how quickly the ute market is changing. For years, the Australian ute market was basically diesel, 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 and just a little bit more diesel. Now we have the BYD Shark 6 plug-in hybrid, we've got the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid, GWM Canon Alpha plug-in, the GAC plug-ins coming as well, LDV electrified utes on the horizon there somewhere, and a lot of pressures from the new vehicle efficiency standard. A recent opinion piece raised the idea of a full battery electric Shark 7, but that's not confirmed product for Australia. BYD has not announced a battery electric ute for this market. Still, the point is fair. If BYD can get a plug-in hybrid ute this far, a full electric ute with stronger range, fast charging and proper towing could be a serious weapon one day. For now, the Shark 6 is doing the job that fully electric utes are not yet doing in Australia. It gives buyers electric commuting range, high power, lower fuel use when charged, and now a stronger towing option. That's why this story matters. The Shark 6 is not perfect, and buyers still need to understand the limits of a plug-in hybrid and its towing abilities, its payload, and its real-world fuel use. But it's already forcing the rest of the ute market to get a wriggle on. MG's premium IM brand is moving quickly, and the next big model for Australia appears to be the IM8. This is where things get a little bit interesting because the IM8 is not just another battery electric SUV. It is expected to be a large premium range extender electric SUV, meaning it uses electric drive but only carries a petrol engine as a generator. Overseas, the vehicle is closely related to the IM-LS8. In Australia, it is expected to sit under the MG umbrella as part of the IM presented by MG sub-brand, alongside models such as the IM5 sedan and the IM6. The IM8 is a big vehicle. Overseas figures for the LS8 listed at around 5,085mm long, 2,000mm wide, and 1,807mm tall, sitting on a 3,060mm wheelbase. That makes it a large family SUV, definitely not a compact crossover. The powertrain is the key part though. The range extender setup pairs a 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol generator with a large battery and electric motors. Now, depending on the variant, overseas versions have been reported with battery packs up to 66 kilowatt hours, electric-only driving range as high as 430 kilometres on the CLTC cycle, and a total driving range claims of around 1,600 kilometres when the battery and the fuel tank are completely full. Now, those are Chinese market cycle figures, so Australian buyers should be cautious. So CLTC numbers are generally more generous than WLTP, or even for real-world driving. And a 1,600 kilometre claim does not mean everyone will see that in normal use. But the basic concept is very relevant to us Aussies. A range extender SUV gives you EV driving most of the time if you charge it, but it also gives you the backup of a petrol generation on long trips. That's different from a traditional plug-in hybrid where the petrol engine usually drives the wheels, at least some of the time. In a range extender layer, the wheels are driven electrically only, and the engine is there simply to make electricity when needed. For families who want electric driving but are nervous about long trips, towing, regional charging gaps, or school holiday travel, this could be an appealing middle ground. Overseas versions have also been linked with high-end chassis technology, including air suspension, continuous damping control, rear-wheel steering, and advanced brake-by-wire systems, depending on the specification. Some versions are rear-wheel drive, while higher output all-wheel drive variants produce around 390 kilowatts with 670 newton meters of torque, and they have a claimed 0 to 100 time in the high 4-second range. Now that means the IM8 could end up as a luxury family SUV with proper performance, a big battery, very long driving range, and lower day-to-day fuel use if you get plugged in. The big unknowns are pricing, final specification, warranty coverage, and whether MG can convince premium buyers to even look at an IM product. MG has done very well in Australia at the affordable end of the market, but selling a large premium SUV is a completely different kettle of fish. Buyers in this space cross-shop Lexus, Volvo, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Genesis, Audi, and even your higher-end Kia and Hyundai models. MG is going to need more than just sharp pricing. It's going to need quality, refinement, dealer support, software stability, strong warranty backing, and a clear explanation of how the range extender system works. The other point is that range extenders are becoming a serious trend. Chinese brands are using them heavily because they solve a perceived problem. Buyers want EV driving, but they also want long-distance confidence. Australia is a huge country with uneven charging coverage, so it's not hard to see why e-revs could work here. The IM8 could be one of the first real tests of whether Australians are ready to see MG as more than just a value brand. Denza is pushing software updates to the B5 and B8, and this is exactly the kind of update owners actually notice. The new over-the-air software update brings towing and off-road improvements, along with some cabin and convenience changes. It is being rolled out free of charge. For the Denza B5, the update adds a dedicated towing mode switch, cruise control compatibility while towing, and the ability to select your trailer weight. Now that trailer weight selection then adjusts vehicle performance, stability systems, and electronic safety behavior to better suit the load. For the larger Denza B8, the update also adds cruise control functionality while towing, plus a dynamic range estimation that adjusts remaining electric and overall range based on driving conditions. That's a useful feature because towing and off-road driving can destroy your range estimates. A range figure that looks fine on the highway can become meaningless once you add a trailer, you're going to climb a hill, hit soft sand, or run all-terrain tyres. Smarter range estimation is exactly the kind of software feature plug-in hybrid off-roaders need. There is also off-road calibration changes, including updates to traction control, wheel speed management, and electric motor torque control. The system has reportedly been validated locally, including at Beeraclock Hill in Queensland, which is a nice bit of Australian relevance. The cabin updates include a driver password lock, changes to power folding seat operation, and anti-pinch resistance detection for the second row seats in both the B5 and B8, plus third row in the B8. Denza's local story is still young, but the sales numbers are worth watching. Since launching in Australia late last year, the dealer network has expanded, and by the end of April, the B5 and the B8 had already started to put some numbers on the board. This is where Denza becomes a little bit more interesting. These are not cheap cars, and they are going up against very established off-road and family SUV names. However, Denza is using electrification and software as a point of difference. The B5 and B8 are plug-in hybrid off-road SUVs. They promise strong performance, electric-only driving for daily use, long total range for touring, and clever traction and chassis systems for off-road work. That's a different position from a diesel Prado, your Everest, or Patrol, or even Land Cruiser. But the hard truth remains, long-term trust has to be earned. Australian off-road buyers care about durability, servicing, parts, tyres, dust, towing, heat, and support in regional areas. Software updates are good, but they do not replace proven reliability. Still, this over-the-air update is a positive sign. It shows Denza is not treating Australian vehicles as fixed at delivery. It is improving towing, range prediction, and off-road behaviour after launch. In a modern electrified four-wheel drive, I think that matters. The International Energy Agency is forecasting another record year for electric vehicle sales. Global electric car sales topped 20 million in 2025, and the IEA expects that number to climb to around 23 million in 2026. Now, that would put electric cars close to 30% of global new car sales. That figure includes battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and range extender electric vehicles. The important point is that global EV growth has not stopped, it has changed shape. China remains the center of the EV universe. It accounts for a huge share of global EV sales, dominates battery cell production, and is exporting millions of electrified vehicles. Europe is also growing again after a difficult policy and incentive period. Southeast Asia is becoming more important. The United States is more uncertain because policy changes and incentives have shifted buyer behaviour. Australia is still a small market globally, but we are no longer invisible. EV sales here have grown sharply, plug-in hybrids are rising quickly, and the new vehicle efficiency standard is giving manufacturers a reason to build more low-emissions models. The big factor is cost. EVs are not automatically cheap to own in every situation, but for many Australian households, the running cost case is getting even stronger. If you can charge at home, especially from solar or off-peak electricity, an EV can be dramatically cheaper to fuel than a petrol or diesel vehicle. If you rely only on expensive DC fast charging, the numbers are less compelling. That is why the details matter. This is not about telling everyone that an EV will save them money. It is about saying the savings are real when the use case lines up. The other thing global scale does is lower prices. More EVs sold globally means more battery production, more platform sharing, more competition, and more pressure on old pricing models. We're already seeing that in Australia. As I mentioned before, the Lexus has cut its RZ prices. MG keeps pushing value. BYD is expanding aggressively. Leap Motor, Xpeng, Zeekr, Smart, GAC, Chery, and others are all adding pressure. The IEA numbers are also a reminder that the EV transition is no longer just about early adopters. Once a quarter of global new car sales are electric, this is a mainstream industry change. There will still be bumps, incentives will change, charging infrastructure will lag in some places, some brands will promise you the world and then give you an atlas. Some vehicles will miss the mark, but the direction is clear. Electrified vehicles are taking a larger share of the global market every day. For us as here in Australia, that means more choice, more competition, and hopefully better prices. The challenge is making sure the charging, servicing, apartment access, and regional infrastructure keep up. Small, affordable electrified cars are still very much alive overseas, and two new models show where the market is heading. First is the MG4X, a new small electric SUV launched in Australia at starting price equivalent to roughly $20,500 in Australia. Now, that does not mean it would cost that here. By the time you add shipping, compliance, taxes, local specifications, you've got dealer margins and warranty support, Australian pricing would be much higher. But it still shows how aggressively MG is moving at the affordable end. The MG4X is around 4.5 metres long, which puts it in the small SUV territory. It shares some design language with the MG4 Urban and the MG S5 EV, both of which are here in Australia. Inside, it uses a layout similar to the MG S5, with a large central screen, a 10.25-inch driver display, and some physical controls have remained. Battery options overseas include a 54 kilowatt-hour pack, described as a liquid solid-state battery with up to 510 kilometres of CLTC range. Liquid solid-state, not sure about that one. A larger CATL pack, around 64 kilowatt-hours, is expected to add roughly about 100 kilometres onto that Chinese test cycle number. Motor outputs are listed at 125 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts, with a 0 to 100 time of about 8 seconds. If MG can bring something like this to Australia, below the mid $30,000 mark, could be very competitive against the Atto 2, GWM's Aura 5, Leapmotor's B10 and other affordable EVs. And the second small car story is the BYD Dolphin G plug-in hybrid hatch, which has been revealed for Europe. Now, this is not the same as the Dolphin EV that's sold here. It's a smaller, Europe-focused plug-in hybrid hatch, measuring around 4,160 millimetres longer, which makes it shorter than the Australian Dolphin EV, but still larger than some upcoming European EVs. This powertrain is expected to be similar to the Atto 2 DMI, which is a 1.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol engine and electric motor. Now, depending on battery size, overseas electric-only range could be around 39 kilometres or 86 kilometres on the WLTP cycle, with a total combined range of around 1,000 kilometres. But here's the local catch. BYD Australia has said this Dolphin plug-in hybrid is not part of the local forward product plan at this stage. Makes sense. The car is being designed specifically for Europe and is expected to be built in Hungary. Shipping a Europe-built plug-in hybrid hatch to Australia just won't make sense when BYD already has strong Chinese-built models here. Still, the Dolphin G matters because it shows BYD is not only chasing SUVs and utes, it also tries to bring efficient, affordable plug-in hybrid small cars for markets where charging access, price and city use are major factors. For Australia, MG's small EV pipeline is probably the more relevant story here. BYD's Dolphin G, I just thought it would be interesting, but it's not locked in for us, and I can't see it being locked in at any time in the near future. I think the broader takeaway is a little bit more simple. The affordable end of the electrified market is still moving fast. BYD has unveiled the next generation of its quote-unquote God's Eye driver assistance technology. And the numbers are big. The company says future models will use its new Zhuangji A3 chip, which is a 4-nanometer in-house chip designed to support advanced driver assistance and higher-level automation driving functions. BYD is also talking about more powerful sensor suites, including high-resolution LiDAR, HDR cameras, and long-wave infrared cameras. It's a serious statement of intent. BYD does not want to be seen only as a battery and value brand. It wants to compete on software, autonomy, and compute power as well. The company has also made a notable move in China by offering a form of liability coverage for accidents during city navigation pilot operation under certain conditions. That is a big confidence signal, although the details and legal environment are China-specific. For Australia, got to be careful. The BYD models currently sold here do not offer city self-driving in the way these Chinese announcements describe. Local cars have adaptive cruise control, lane support, and conventional driver assistance systems. But this next generation God's Eye rollout is not something buyers should assume is coming here immediately. There are several reasons for that. First, the hardware may differ. between Chinese domestic models and Australian delivered vehicles. Second, the software needs local road validation. Third, regulations and liability are different. Fourth, Australian roads are messy. Faded lane markings, roadworks, roundabouts, rural edges, speed zone changes, wildlife, and inconsistent signage all create challenges. That does not mean the technology is irrelevant. It's very relevant. BYD is investing heavily in intelligent driving, and as the brand sells more cars here, Australian buyers will increasingly expect better driver assistance systems. But the correct way to frame this as a technology direction, not a local feature promise. It also puts pressure on other brands. Tesla has made software and assisted driving a major part of its identity. XPeng is known for smart driving tech. Zeekr, GAC, Chery, Neo, and others are pushing hard. If BYD wants to stay ahead, it cannot rely on battery value. For Australian buyers, the advice is simple. Judge the car you can actually buy, not the technology demo overseas. If a local BYD has the hardware and software, test it properly. If it does not, do not buy based on what might arrive later. Still, this announcement shows where the market is heading. Cars are becoming electric, connected, software updatable, and sensor heavy. The brands that will win need to build not just efficient vehicles, but good computers on wheels. BYD chasing Tesla. Tesla has a very big advantage here, very big head start, and you can already get full self-driving supervised here in Australia. So if that's something of interest to you, then you definitely need to be checking out the Tesla, because it's not a future product, it's here now. So, all right, on to the next piece. All right, there are 3 practical electrification stories today, and they all matter in different ways. So I thought I'd sort of group them all together. First, Kia's PV5 electric van has been spotted in Australia ahead of its expected local launch. The PV5 was approved for Australia earlier this year, and the version seen locally appears to be a consumer-bound or launch preparation vehicle rather than just a distant concept. The approval documents point to 3-door and 4-door configurations, including a version that has an extra driver's side door. The Australian PV5 is expected to use a 71.2 kilowatt-hour CATL battery in the long-range form, with around 416 kilometres of WLTP range. It uses a 120 kilowatt front motor and Kia's 400-volt platform beyond vehicle architecture. Charging from 10 to 80% is expected to take around 30 minutes, and vehicle-to-load output is listed at 3.68 kilowatts. Dimensions are compact by van standards, about 4.695 metres long and just under 1.9 metres high. Brake towing is listed at 750 kilograms. Kia has already shown local pricing around $55,990 before on-road costs, and the company has talked about local ride and handling work for Australian urban delivery and rougher country road use. That's important because electric vans are one of the most logical EV use cases. Delivery vehicles often run very predictable routes, return to base, sit in traffic, and rack up the kilometres. Lower running costs and reduced servicing can matter here more than in private cars. Now, the second practical story is Tesla's new V2L adapter. Tesla is now preparing an official vehicle-to-load adapter in Australia for the new Model Y L 6-seater. The adapter is priced at $145 and is rated at 230 volts and 15 amps with an output of up to 3.5 kilowatts. Now that means it can power things like tools, e-bike chargers, camping gear, or a space heater within the limits of the system. This is a feature many other EV brands have offered for quite some time, including BYD, Hyundai, Kia, MG, and others, so Tesla's not leading here. It's also catching up. Also, the important limitation is that this adapter is only for compatible Model Y L vehicles at this stage. Existing Tesla owners should not assume that their Model 3 or Model Y can suddenly do V2L, although I have seen some aftermarket bits of kit doing it. But again, aftermarket, so you want to be careful there with your vehicle warranty. On to our third story, and it is Amber, and it's expanding its vehicle-to-grid pilot. Amber has secured additional federal and ARENA funding to expand its V2G trial to more than 1,000 electric vehicles. The original smaller trial attracted thousands of inquiries, and the expanded project is expected to support hundreds more customers and thousands of smart chargers. Now, the idea is simple but powerful. When electricity is cheap or renewable supply is high, the car charges. When the grid is under pressure and prices spike, the car can export power back if the owner allows it. Amber says customers could save significant money and in some cases earn money during extreme price events. But the real issue is not just the customer bill. It's what happens when thousands or eventually hundreds of thousands of EVs can act as flexible grid batteries. Australia has a huge rooftop solar fleet. We have big daytime solar generation, evening demand peaks, and growing battery uptake. EV batteries could become part of that system. But there are barriers. Standards need to be sorted, charger hardware needs to be improved, automakers need to allow bidirectional use without destroying battery warranties, customers need simple controls so they are not left with an empty car when they need to drive. And that's why the pilot matters. Vehicle to grid sounds great in theory, but the practical details are everything. Alright, one final Tesla story, and this one is more of a future tech note than a production announcement. Tesla has filed patents that point to ways of reducing heat and noise through large glass roofs. That matters because anyone who has driven a glass-roofed EV in Australia in summer knows the issue. Even with good tinting, the cabin can feel hot, and heat soak can make air conditioning work that much harder. The patent includes multi-layer roof structures, breathable or honeycomb-style sections, airflow layers, and even systems that target hot air trapped beneath the glass. The goal is to reduce heat transfer into the cabin and potentially reduce cabin noise as well. To be clear, a patent does not mean the technology is coming to the next Model Y or 3. Companies patent ideas all the time and not all of them become production features. But the issue is real. Glass roofs look fantastic and they help cabins feel open and premium. But in Australia, they can be a mixed blessing. If Tesla or any other EV maker can improve heat management without forcing owners into aftermarket shades or tinting, that'd be awesome. This is the kind of practical detail that matters more as EVs become mainstream. Range and charging still matters, but so does cabin comfort in a 40-degree summer day. And that's a wrap for episode 60 of Plugged In Australia for Monday the 1st of June, 2026. Can't believe it's June already, my goodness. And today's episode shows just how broad the Australian electrified vehicle market has become. Mitsubishi is coming back to EVs with local testing and tuning. Didn't think that was on the bingo card for this year. Lexus is having to reset premium EV pricing. BYD is turning the Shark 6 into a more serious ute range. MG is preparing a larger range extender SUV. And Denza is using software to improve towing and off-road behaviour. Now, while some of the overseas models mentioned today aren't coming here, some range claims are based on generous test cycles, some driver assistance announcements don't apply to Australia just yet, and some technology, like V2G, still has standards, warranty and hardware hurdles to clear. But the direction is clear. Electrified vehicles are becoming more varied, more practical and more competitive for the Australian buyers. And that means more choice, but also more homework. And that's what we're here to try and help you with, is some of that homework. So thanks again for listening to the podcast today. Any feedback, info@pluggedinaustralia.com.au. And until the next time, stay plugged in and stay charged. Ci vediamo.